October 1962. In less than an hour, New York is gone, Moscow is reduced to ashes, and Havana burns in silence. This was the day the world almost ended, but didn't. We call it the Cuban Missile Crisis, the 13 most dangerous days in human history. Days when a single wrong order, a single bullet could have triggered global nuclear war. But what if things had gone differently? What if the crisis of 1962 had exploded into a full-scale nuclear conflict? What kind of world would we be living in today? In October of 1962, American U-2 spy planes uncovered Soviet nuclear missiles secretly deployed in Cuba. Missiles that could strike Washington, D.C. in minutes. President John F. Kennedy immediately raised U.S. forces to the highest alert since World War II. Meanwhile, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev saw Cuba as his trump card, a way to balance American missiles placed in Turkey. The entire world held its breath for 13 days. On one side, the U.S. Navy encircled Cuba in a naval blockade. On the other, Soviet ships sailed toward the island carrying nuclear warheads. Every hour was a gamble. One collision at sea, one warning shot misunderstood, and civilization itself could have been lost. But imagine this, what if Kennedy had chosen not to blockade, but to bomb Cuba directly? The Soviets would not have stood by. Within minutes, a missile is launched from Cuba toward Miami. Over 1 million civilians erased in a single strike. The United States retaliates. Nuclear warheads rain down on Havana and Moscow. In response, the Soviet Union unleashes strikes on Berlin, London, even New York. The sky turns white with nuclear fire, and then everything goes dark. Within just 1 week, tens of millions are dead. The capitals of the world reduced to rubble. Temperatures spike, flames consume entire cities, and fallout clouds rise into the stratosphere. Europe becomes a graveyard. Berlin, Paris, and Rome are left as radioactive ruins. NATO disintegrates within hours. The Warsaw Pact collapses with it. In America, the federal government retreats underground. For ordinary people, there's only chaos. Looting, panic, starvation, and the terrifying question in a world shattered like this, who would lead humanity forward? There would be no Summer of Love in 1967, no hippie movement, no Woodstock, because an entire generation of young people would never survive. The global economy crashes to nothing. Survivors cluster in scattered pockets, living hand-to-mouth, searching for food and clean water. Science and technology are pushed back by decades. Forget Silicon Valley. Forget landing on the moon. At best, humanity would cling to old transistor radios, hoping to hear another voice in the silence. And above all, the planet faces nuclear winter. Thick clouds of ash block out the sun. Crops fail. Hunger spreads across every continent. Meanwhile, a new power could emerge. China, still largely untouched in this timeline, might rise far earlier, becoming the center of global influence by the late 1960s. So the question becomes, if the West had collapsed in nuclear fire, would Asia have become the heart of civilization half a century earlier? In our reality, the Cold War dragged on until 1991. We got computers, the internet, global trade, but in the nuclear timeline of 1962, there is no internet, no smartphones, no global economy. There is only survival, only fractured communities clinging to life in the ruins. And instead of debating whether Cuba should be sanctioned today, people would be asking, who lived through the firestorms of 1962? In reality, Kennedy and Khrushchev both stepped back. A secret deal was struck. The Soviets pulled their missiles from Cuba, the US removed its missiles from Turkey, and humanity lived to see another day. But the shadow still hangs over us. Because if just one wrong move had been made, if one button had been pressed, we might not be here right now. So I'll leave you with this question. If nuclear war had erupted in 1962, could humanity have rebuilt itself? Or would that have been the true end? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe because the next What If might change the way you see history forever.